Callie. Welcome back to my channel. I do apologize for the 3-week to a month delay, and this is my first time posting in that long of time. I do apologize. I was just going through some stuff, trying to figure out how I wanted to revamp and redo my channel, and I am presenting with you today what my revamp is. If you can tell by the title, we are going to go ahead and go over my diagnosis story as a type 1 diabetic. So yes, if you didn't know, I am a type 1 diabetic. I've been a type 1 for about 5 years now, and we're just going to go ahead and get started right into the video and my story. My story starts back in May of 2017, and I wasn't diagnosed then, and I wasn't diagnosed till a little while later, but that is where I'm going to start. And the reason I am starting there is because around that time I was noticing some symptoms and now that I know what type 1 is and what diabetes is, that is what was happening. But I was going to my sister's wedding, and I was in New Orleans, and we were walking around New Orleans, and this is probably one of my first symptoms, the first times that I could tell I was really like something was wrong. And we were walking around, and I started to get really just like dehydrated. I was falling over. I couldn't sit up at the bar, so to speak, but it wasn't a bar, it was Cafe Du Monde, if you've ever been there. We were getting beignets, and I could not sit up. I looked like I was drunk. I honestly don't know whether it was a high blood sugar or a low blood sugar. I'm pretty sure it was a low, because I went to go eat a beignet and everything was fine. I went back to normal. I was a little shaky. I was a little like disoriented, but for the most part I could walk around that part of New Orleans that we were in, and I was perfectly fine. Now we get back home to my hometown, and I am in my senior year of high school, and I'm in my sewing class. And in my sewing class I was having a lot of problems, like going low or having low type symptoms. I was getting shaky. I was having hypoglycemic symptoms. I was getting confused. And so I told my mom, who is a nurse, that this stuff was going on. And so she suggested that I try to bring some snacks with me to eat in the classroom. Well, at that time, that wasn't really helping. I tried to eat around that time in my sewing class where I was feeling those symptoms, which was towards the end of the day. So this would have been around like 2:30 to 3 o'clock in the day. Every single day I was having these symptoms, and I tried to eat and nothing was working. So that's the second thing that was going on. And so then we hit summer, and I'm on summer break, and I am just the worst I've ever seen myself. So this is around like end of May, June. I just spend days I threw up every day, and I threw up starting in May. I was just throwing up every single day, probably once or twice a day. Sorry if that's TMI. I was sleeping a lot. I was just very fatigued and tired. I think I did drink a lot more water than normal, but I usually drink water, so I didn't really notice that. But my biggest symptom was that I was losing weight. I lost about 20 to 30 pounds in 3 months. And this happened every single day during my summer break. Now, we get to end of June, maybe beginning of July. And my mom was a nurse, my dad was a doctor at this time. And so they're both like, yo, something's like not right. This isn't normal, basically. And so they took me to my primary care physician, who at the time saw me, and I'm not going to name names because my friends and family might be seeing this, but I'll say he ended up being very dismissive and not very understanding, and being very like, oh, it's no big deal. And my mom, who was a nurse, like I said, pushed for blood draw, and he refused to do the blood draw and said, oh, it's probably your gallbladder, because I was having stomach pain too. And he's like, oh, it's probably your gallbladder. We'll schedule a CT or whatever in a month. Okay, so as time goes on, maybe about 2 or 3 weeks, I'm still having these, I'm throwing up, I'm sleeping all the time, I don't want to do anything, I'm drinking copious amounts of water, just those kind of things. I've lost 30 pounds, I look really thin, like something isn't right, like it's not my gallbladder. My mom knew this, my dad knew this, they thought I had cancer. So my dad and my mom get together, and my dad was seeing a different doctor than I at the time, who was also a general physician. I was 18, so I didn't need to see a pediatrician, but I saw my dad's doctor, because my mom and dad were both like, yeah, this isn't like a gallbladder problem, seriously. And so they got me into my dad's doctor. Now, my dad's doctor immediately did blood work. I'm really fuzzy on this part of the story because I semi-remembered like back when it happened. But going to that specific doctor, I knew he did blood work. I knew he did what my mom asked him to, did other tests. But I think because I was so dehydrated and so sick, that all I know is that he did blood work, and like I don't remember anything before or after that, because my mom told me he did blood work. So I passed out, and apparently, I'll fast forward, but we go to that doctor, we do the blood work, he sees me, does the regular, well visit doctor stuff, and I go home. And so my dad, I could not go to work, I was so sick, and I think I stayed home that day, or I didn't go back to work, I don't remember. But my dad goes to work, my mom's out with my sister because she had a pageant. I don't know, because all I remember is going to sleep, and then about like hour and a half to 2 hours later, my dad comes home like early from work, and he's like, we're going to the hospital. And I'm like, what's wrong? And he's like, you're sick, we gotta go. And apparently my mom had been trying to call me because she thought something happened to me, because they knew it was wrong, but I didn't. And so on the way to the hospital, we're sitting like in the car, so I'm in the passenger side, he's driving, and he's like, puts his hand on my leg, and he's like, listen here. He's like, don't worry, which, I mean, of course, I'm gonna worry. You say, don't worry. I'm like, okay, I'm not worrying, whatever. He's like, don't worry, we're going to the hospital, you're gonna be there for a few days, because you have type 1 diabetes. And I was like, I what? And I'm like, I have what? So I'm like, I'm so out of it that I'm like, okay, sure. I was like, whatever type 1, I'm like, whatever type 1 diabetes is, yeah. And so we get to the hospital, I'm doing the check-in thing, and I vaguely remember events from me being in the hospital, but I will tell you that July, I think it was like 17th of 2015, so I forgot to say, this was in 2015, so about 5 years ago. I was in the hospital for 3 days. Now, the events that I do remember is that I know my blood sugar was over 400. I know that my A1C was 10, and my primary care doctor, the one who ended up doing the blood work and actually diagnosing me, said if I had waited another month, then I would have died. But I ended up spending 3 days in the hospital. All I remember really is blood draws every 4 hours. I was really tired. My mom ended up coming to stay with me. Bless her heart. Ended up coming to stay with me mostly every night, and then traveling back to be with my sister, who was in a pageant and like an hour, 2 hours away from me. So yeah, that was not fun. I don't think I really slept. And I also remember having, I think, a potassium IV that I screamed one night, bloody murder at one morning, bloody murder at 3 a.m. because it hurt so bad. And the nurse came in, and she finally, after me screaming for what felt like forever, she came in and she was like, oh, sorry, someone's just trying to die in the other room. And I was like, what? I was like, you're telling me this? I'm sitting here on this hospital bed thinking I'm about to die, and you're telling me this. But after day 3, I finally got to go home, and it was a big, big adjustment, and has been the biggest adjustment of my life for the past 5 years. But I'm glad someone caught it and realized that that was what was happening, and I really needed to get blood work done. because if not, I would not be here today. And I'm thankful for my parents for advocating for me. But yeah, that was just me sharing my story with you. Hopefully it helps you, and I will see y'all in the next video. I hope you enjoyed this video. Go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and that bell to be notified every time I post a new video. So, bye!